Tere. It's great to be here in Tallinn. Thanks, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. 10 years ago, some friends and I started an experiment. We thought, what if we could reshape a small part of our city and make it better? And we noticed that in the city of San Francisco, where I live, over a quarter of the city's land area is streets and roads. But only a fraction of that space is actually accessible by people. So we thought, what if we could transform a small part of the urban landscape and make it a better place to socialize, to play, to enjoy? And so we encountered the metered parking space, and we thought, San Francisco real estate is quite expensive, but actually if you put a couple coins in the meter, we can lease this space and do something much more interesting in it than store a car. So we put some coins in the parking meter, we rolled out some living grass, we set up a park bench and a tree, and then we withdrew. We went back across the street and just sat and watched what happened. And lo and behold, in a few minutes, this guy sat down, he started eating a piece of pizza, and this fella came and sat on the tree and they started having a conversation. And we realized, okay, great, the project is a success. We created an invitation for social life, whereas before it was just storing a giant chunk of metal. So we posted this picture on the internet, and within a few weeks we started getting calls from people all over the world saying, what a cool idea, your parking day thing. Can you come to Australia to do this? Can you come to Santa Monica to do this? And I couldn't physically travel around the world that time, and so we made this decision to make the project open source. So we took the kind of very basic idea of the guerrilla art installation and, inspired by an IKEA manual, translated a guerrilla art project into a how-to manual which made the project open source so that anybody around the world could take the concept and use it in their own environment. So we started seeing these parking installations starting pop up in Los Angeles, in Italy, in Glasgow, Scotland, and all over the world. And the next year we decided to call the thing Parking Day and make a national day to transform parking spaces into people spaces. And we set up a website so that people all over the world could collaborate and use this as a tool to share ideas and come up with ideas for transforming parking spaces in their own community. And lo and behold, this started to be picked up and go around the world. People use this idea to promote the need for free health clinics on a dangerous street, or to talk about the need for more urban open space in their cities, or simply to create a place to play and have fun in the city, which is often such a kind of hard urban landscape. And these parking day installations started appearing all over the world. This was really to our surprise. This is in Seoul, South Korea, in Tehran, Iran, Sacramento, California. So all over the place, it seems like this Parking Day project has become sort of like the gateway drug for urban transformation. So in a few short years, this simple $200 installation has now become a global public participatory art project, and it's really shaping the way we think about cities and design. So it's traveled all over the world, 160 countries, 35 continents, all except Antarctica. We're waiting for a Parking Day project in Antarctica. So I want to tell a story today about my transformation from a guerrilla artist to an urban designer, which I am today, and talk about how my work has shaped cities a little bit and how I've been really influenced and shaped by the changing way that we think about, we plan and design our cities. And the point of my talk today is that we are all urban residents, right? So many of us on the planet are living in cities today, and we have a choice. We have a responsibility to make our cities great. We are the city, and we can make the city great. I started in art school in Chicago, studying sculpture and performance art. Living in Chicago as a poor artist, was an exciting time, but being in art school really helped me approach everything I do with an attitude of curiosity and experimentation. But I left art school. I felt like I wasn't getting a good enough liberal arts education. I traveled to Alaska. I worked in the fishing industry for a little while. And in Alaska, I got really inspired by medicinal plants and biology. So I started studying biology and biochemistry. And as a sculptor, I was really fascinated, actually, by the incredible shapes of the molecules that make up our daily lives. These as sculptural objects I found really inspiring. So getting a biology degree, my first job was actually working in a lab in Ithaca, New York. And this turned out to be far too much of a distance from my identity as an artist, and the lab environment was really not for me, so I literally ran out of the door, opened the window of the lab, and ran out of the door screaming all the way to San Francisco, to the promised land, the Bay Area. And in the Bay Area, I ended up finding the Department of Landscape Architecture and Environmental Design at UC Berkeley. and I encountered this incredible legacy of folks who really care about making our cities great, in particular, understand the role of streets and their role in public spaces in cities, or the relationship between urban form and the way that cities make us feel. And I encountered the work of Jan Gehl in his really important book, Life Between Buildings. So I graduated from Berkeley and I started working in San Francisco. I worked from a great landscape architecture company in San Francisco, and I started working on plans like this, big projects that would take years to build. And so it took so long for me to understand the results of the implications of my drawing and design, and I almost never saw anything built. Therefore, my friends and I started taking action. We wanted to see some more immediate changes in our cities, and thus we came up with this parking day project idea. So a couple years after the first parking day, we were approached by some folks in the city government of San Francisco. They said, hey, we want to come and talk to you. And I thought, oh boy, this is it. We're finally going to get a fine for this. We'd never gotten a permit or permission for any of this parking day stuff. I thought, okay, this is it. They're going to put us in jail. But of course, it was just the opposite. They said, this is such a great idea. How can we get you to do more of these? And I said, well, hey, why don't you make it an official city program? Make this part of the city government. And at that time, the guys in City Hall said, don't do that. No way. Don't make it a city program. That'll totally suck the life out of it and kill it. Just keep doing what you're doing, you crazy artists. Just keep having fun. And so we did that. My colleagues and I formed this, turned our art collective into an art and design studio called Rebar, and we started looking at ways to improve our cities, try to fulfill unmet human needs in cities, such as taking a nap. How many of you wish you could take a nap during kind of midday, right? Well, we decided to find out. We set up a free napping facility in public spaces in downtown San Francisco, and of course it was booked solid all day. People said, hey, are you going to be here next week? I'd love to take another nap. Or we thought, what if we could soften the urban landscape? Sometimes public spaces seem so hard and cruel. What if we could invite a little playfulness and fun into them? And so, combining these ideas of gumball, automat, merkin, colony, swarm, of course you come up with something called bushwaffle. It's a vending machine inflatable furniture device, and it's about introducing some softness into the urban landscape. A really fun idea. Or, with all these parking spaces we're taking over, what are we going to do with all those cars? Let's turn them into a community performance space. This is made out of 65 car hoods, actually, and it was a community performance space that was open for several months in the city, a temporary project. Or with all this lawn that we're putting in parking spaces, maybe it's time to take some of this lawn away. Lawn is, after all, quite unsustainable, and so we convinced the mayor of San Francisco at that time, Gavin Newsom, to remove the lawn in front of City Hall and instead grow some food, plant a beautiful garden. And so we worked with hundreds of volunteers all over the Bay Area, planted organic seedlings in this organic soil, and we started growing food and distributing it to local food banks in San Francisco. We grew 1,000 pounds of food over the summer and distributed that to meals programs throughout the city. So these were all examples of what I think of as iterative placemaking, this idea that a short-term intervention can actually influence long-term thinking in cities. Think about the way that we typically design and plan cities. There's a long planning process, there's community outreach, there's construction, and then you look at and evaluate the project at the end. Iterative placemaking is more about a phase sequence of intervention followed by evaluation to shape place over time. This idea was really picked up by folks in the city government in New York City. They took it way further than we did in San Francisco. And it started with this plan. We want to make sure that there's a quality open space within a 10-minute walk of everyone in New York City. And Jeanette Sadiq-Khan, who was working in the Bloomberg administration at that time, knew that if we try to do this the typical way, it's going to take 2 years for every park, and it's going to cost $2 million. But if we use this short-term approach, the tactical approach, the iterative placemaking approach, we can build dozens of plazas and miles of new bike lanes in just a very short period of time, totally transforming New York City. It's quite remarkable, actually, what was done in 3 years in New York City. Back in San Francisco, Jeanette Sadiq-Khan, Jan Gehl came to San Francisco and said, look, guys, look what we're doing in New York. You're a creative city. Maybe you can do something better in San Francisco. And so we thought about taking this parking day idea and making it permanent. This is Andres Power. He's a friend of mine. He's what I call a guerrilla bureaucrat. He's someone who works in City Hall but was willing to take a risk to try something new. So he said, hey, why don't we take your parking concept and try to make it more permanent? So they enlisted us to come up with a concept design for something they called parklets. It was a more permanent intervention in the parking lane, a little miniature public space. We tried it out. It was up for 6 months. It ended up being quite popular. And so the city of San Francisco created this pavement to parks program, which now would allow anybody in the city who has a parking space in front of their home or business to turn it into a little miniature public space. And it's really important to note that these are actually public spaces. They're not like cafe table and chair seating where you have to buy a cup of coffee or tea to sit there. These are open to everyone. And what's so neat about them is that they're these nuanced expressions of the public realm. They're all so different, and they're shaped by the character and the kind of energy of the project sponsors. So these are now all over San Francisco. They take many different forms. I've learned from that as an artist. Every time a new parklet is done, I study it, and that informs the way we think about and design them. And so it's really been an interesting process. So the effort to take that guerrilla art project and turn it into a city program was really quite difficult. This is actually a streamlined process of what it takes to get a parklet done in San Francisco, but this is the real energy and effort required by the guerrilla bureaucrats to take a guerrilla art project and turn it into something which can transform cities all over the planet, and that's what's happening. Using the parklet how-to manual now that the city of San Francisco created, we're now seeing cities all over the country, and actually all over the world, trying parklet programs in their own cities. So Boston has a program. Philadelphia. This is in Miami. You know, if you can do this in Miami, if you can do this in Los Angeles, you can really do this anywhere on the planet. Here's a mobile parklet, actually, that was created in Mexico City. So again, as an artist, I continued to try to push the ideas involved in Parking Day, and we came with the concept of the park cycle swarm. What if you could download a kit and build your own park and pedal it around the city to set up a park where and when you needed it? It was this idea of a mobile, pedal-powered public open space. You could deliver park where and when you needed it anywhere. In order to really realize this project, I ended up collaborating with a fantastic artist and designer in Copenhagen named John Sorven with a group called N55, and he helped me build these. And while I was in Copenhagen, I thought, maybe I'll go check out the Gehl architects. It seemed like everywhere I had been in the world, Jan Gehl had been there right before me. He'd already been there, doing some great stuff. And so I thought, I want to check this guy out. Who is this Jan Gehl guy? So I go to Gehl Architects in Copenhagen, and I learned that, Jan and Gehl Architects were responsible for transforming Copenhagen from a very car-choked city center 40 years ago to one of the world's most livable cities as we know it today. And of course I show up. The office is filled with beautiful Danish people, this light and smiles and happiness, and they're sitting in a parking spot. And so I asked them about, how are you doing this? How are you transforming cities around the world? And they said, we use this public space, public life survey. We count people. We start measuring people. And we really study this relationship between life in cities and the kind of form that supports life. As Jan Gehl has said, it seems like sometimes we know better how to create habitat for animals in zoos than we know how to create human habitat, our own cities, that supports the life and vitality of people. And so, the concept is you measure what you care about. Great cities are cities for people. And a city for people is one where people count. And how do you make people count? It's very simple. You start counting people. And let me give you an example. So this is Times Square in New York City. Gehl Architects comes to New York. And we start studying Times Square. And it turns out that there's no square in Times Square. 90% of the space in Times Square is for cars and traffic. Only 11% of the space is actually allocated for people, but the use patterns are reversed. Almost 90% of the people in Times Square are on foot, and only 11% are in vehicles. Using this data, the Bloomberg administration said, of course, we have to change this equation. We need to create the space for people to make more invitations for people to take advantage of this and use it. And so using this approach, the kind of iterative placemaking approach, the idea of measuring, testing ideas, and then refining, Gehl Architects really transformed New York City. It started like this, a temporary takeover of Times Square using chairs bought from a local construction store. And New Yorkers immediately flooded out into the space. And they weren't asking, hey, what happened to our roadways? They were saying, hey, we need better furniture. This is New York City. You can't give us those plastic lawn chairs. Get us some better furniture. And so each year they tried something new, an iterative process of working with artists, doing a better, beautiful graphic. And it's really totally transformed the identity of Times Square from what this kind of typical image of cars, traffic, lights, and music to what's happening in Times Square today. Can you believe this? This is like the world's biggest yoga event happening in the middle of Times Square. So it's really about rethinking the way that we use our urban spaces. So I left Gehl Architects and I went back to San Francisco, continued to work with Rebar, and I ended up bringing this Park Cycle Swarm project to Baku. It was designed for. And there I was in Baku. Here's the Park Cycle. It worked really well. We pedaled around the city. We had a great time. We set up these public spaces throughout the city. You could download the plans from the internet. We had a wonderful time there. But on my way back and forth from the airport, I encountered spaces like this. And I can't believe that in a city like Azerbaijan, wealthy, smart people, they're still building roads like this with no pedestrian crossings for miles. I'm not going to show you the videos of what it looks like to try to cross the street in Baku. But the point is that we can't continue to build roads like this. We've got to do a much better job of making cities more humane, more inviting, more safe for people. So that's when I decided to join Gehl Architects, actually, and open up a studio in San Francisco. I now work with this incredible team of artists, designers, sociologists, architects, and we're working all over the planet to improve cities for people, including back in my city of San Francisco. So we came up with this idea, actually my colleague Jeff came up with this idea of the Living Innovation Zone. Let's take the parklet concept but not just do it in a park in a parking spot. Let's use that idea to activate any spots we need in the city, whether it's on the sidewalk, an area that needs some life and activity. And so we partnered with a local science organization to introduce this whispering dishes on Market Street in San Francisco. And lo and behold, you start to invite some more creativity, invest some more creativity in the city, and what you get is more people hanging out, more people socializing, more people spending time and really enjoying their city in a different way. The city of San Francisco recently, this is just 2 weeks ago, really started to take this to a new level. They did a project called the Market Street Prototyping Festival, and they've been trying to work on Market Street for years. It's been moving really slowly. It's a lethargic bureaucratic process. But this guy, Neil Hershowy, he's also a guerrilla bureaucrat. He said, why don't we give out 50 grants of $2,000 each and just open it up to the city to see what we can come up with to activate our main civic spine on Market Street. And so this was the result. Beautiful art pieces. People applied from all over the country. Musical instruments in the street, rocking lawns, ping pong, a wishing tree, the idea of taking parklet and creating housing, a houselet. Mobile education places, habitat on Market Street, places for children to play, taking boring office furniture and making it fun again, or just inviting people to be part of making their city beautiful by drawing, creating, playing, having fun and enjoying. So this was just 2 weeks ago in San Francisco. It's really transformed the way we think about our city. I've never had more fun on Market Street, actually. I've never encountered more people from different backgrounds, different walks of life. All of a sudden, our main civic spine was full of people. This was actually a hack to the festival itself, a pea planter, a biofiltering planter. Someone just came up with this idea and inserted it into the program themselves. It wasn't even officially part of the festival. And coming up with activities that really enlivened the city at night. Gehl Architects, my team, Gehl Studio in San Francisco, has been observing all the activity on Market Street and seeing how, which of these installations people enjoy and which one of these can really inform and shape the future of Market Street, shape the future of the city. So we're measuring and talking to people and understanding what works and what didn't as a way to shape the long-term future of the city. I've never had more fun on Market Street, and it was a beautiful day. So here's my point. How do you start? It's not difficult. It's really easy to shape your own city. Do a park in a parking spot. This cost me $200. Or you can set up an urban garden and grow some food in your city. Or do a living innovation zone. Or set up a prototyping festival. I'd love to do that here in Tallinn, actually. But the point is, start measuring people, measure what you care about, count people. You make up the city. What kind of city do you want to live in, right? We are the city. And whether you're an architect or a planner or just an everyday person, you make the city, and you can make the city great. Thank you.